Welcome back to Need for Speed the Run. We have left Cleveland, and now we have to finish up the run in our shiny new supercar.
Which I will amend my previous statement by saying is pronounced Pagani Huayra, at least in the Italian.
I will take your word for it.
Gaining ground now. Good work.
So this is a $1.4 million car, which I will naturally ruin by taking it into this cornfield.
Well, your choice of Slam Jams is always appreciated. I see from the music credit below that, well, the Black Keys' Lonely Boy is actually one of my favorite songs on this soundtrack, and I'm a little sad not to hear it.
So the Black Keys is Dan Auerbach's, like, super real band. He has a couple other ones, but this is his main one. So, Expressway is just Country Highway from Stage 7, but backwards. Not a lot changes, but a lot of these approaches into the major corners are not ideal. This one is fine. The biggest change comes as you go through this orchard, running down into the second cornfield, which is fraught with peril.
Considering you're now in a very different class of automobile, you don't seem to be clowning the opposition quite as hard as I think you ought to in a Huayra.
Oh, I would love to. Unfortunately, the physics kind of screwed me here. If you're really good, you can take the cornfield at like $1.20. Let's avoid this traffic.
Would you say this is definitely a case where, based on the vehicle you're using, it's preferable to actually, hey, a crop duster, to actually not take the shortcuts, given the off-road?
At least for that one, yes. That was one of the ones we avoided before. The handling of the Huayra is very well tuned to these very narrow technical roads, so I can really push the car hard. I don't have a lot of trouble overtaking. Sometimes what you'll see is one of those Ford GTs will get really far ahead, and then you're completely screwed, but this time I got lucky, he got trapped in the cornfield.
Well, hopefully they find him and get him out so that he can see your victory lap.
I would be very interested to see how many husks of cars are left behind in these cornfields at the end of the run. Taking the jumps through the cornfield in particular can be an exercise in frustration. After you've done it a few times, you'll learn how to tweak the car and get its trajectory going, but if you're good at it, you can really, really make or break your run there.
So it looks like we have an outtake in the making.
We do. So this guy hits the traffic.
Ow.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Well, traffic chain reactions are just part of life in Need for Speed land.
It's just one of these things you have to get used to. Let's move on to West Virginia.
Interstate 68. I'm gonna have to look this up to see if you did end up having to teleport through another state.
We've well established that the way that Jack gets from San Fran to New York is questionable at best. So Interstate 68 is another wide-open highway event.
Local code 6 is on view, code 3 pursuit westbound on I-75.
Which is really great for us in the Huayra because it's got the fastest top speed by a pretty fair margin, actually, in T5.
Well, I hope that cop was impressed by the flipped-over car as well as the quality of vehicle from Modena he's looking at right now.
You can actually kind of physics through that train track.
He's not slowing down. On unit 10 mobile, go, go, go! He's still moving!
And you can lose 20 or 30 miles an hour.
Unit down, unit down!
This back half of Interstate 68 is very dangerous because the cops will rubber band up to you and try to wreck you, and naturally that's not going to go very well if you're doing a $1.75 like I am here.
And once again, the dust particle effects seem determined to impede your progress just as anything else.
I don't know why they're here. This turn is also very nasty.
Cancel that, we see him.
Because of the fact that you crest the hill doing about 200, you're going to have the drive wheels unload a little bit.
We can't nail this guy. Request additional units.
And that means that you're going to start drifting in the direction of however you were turning before, so I usually just let off the gas.
Speaking of that point, you were also mentioning something a bit earlier, at least in a passing conversation, about the Lyra and its specific hydraulic avionics, so to speak.
10-4, Delta unit standing by.
Well, that is a little bit unusual. The Lyra sticks to the ground like glue in this game. It eats corners alive, which is very helpful, especially when this car can do 227. But what's supposed to happen in the Lyra is that, because this is a $1.4 million car, the little spoilers on either side of the car are going to go up and down based on how you're turning. That's what helps keep the car grounded at these super, super high speeds.
Zulu 3-3, on scene.
But for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be modeled on the actual vehicle.
We can't nail this guy.
So autopilot's really bad. I'm usually faster than it, and sometimes it can screw you. Like this.
Good lord. No, NFS autopilot screwing someone over during a cutscene to watch a wreck is pretty common, I think.
But it's especially bad in this game.
Wait,
Oh, wait, didn't we beat you before?
I'm quite certain you did. Why is she back here?
Because we are officially into the Mega Man end of stage boss rush. It's the same old Z, and this time we're racing Mila on a very, very technical road.
Competition's heating up. Be careful.
Deer Park is one of my favorite events in the game just because it's such a pretty course. But it is weird that she's here.
Yeah, considering you didn't actually lose a place, but she still managed to get ahead of you. So, this is just my obligatory, this race structure really doesn't make sense when you think about it for more than 2 seconds statement.
Oh, absolutely not. And what is she even doing here? Like, how did she get ahead of us? Wouldn't we have seen her somehow?
Yeah, and wouldn't that have affected your placement given that she was behind you back in Las Vegas?
Yeah. And if people can pass one another, how do Jack and Sam even know whether or not Jack is in 50th place, 60th place?
I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Thanks, EA. Also, what was that tree just parting for you guys to go through there?
These hairpins go pretty well with a little application of the handbrake, which I almost never use. Except, of course, for that bit where I kind of forgot what gear I was in for a minute.
Well, you're making it work.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're doing okay. Mila's right on our tail as we dodge this traffic narrowly. Oh, see ya, Mila.
Yeah, given that she's still in that Nissan, I find her chances questionable, and thus the boss rush kind of... Well, it loses the boss part of it at this point.
It does. And you may recall that she actually did hit traffic, but when we passed that checkpoint, she respawned right behind us, so that's cool.
Rubber band's got a rubber band, right?
I guess. I guess we finally figured out how the extreme bosses keep catching up with me after I outdrive them. I use nitrous up this hill to make sure that we keep the car in the power band.
I will say this, I do actually really like the scenery in this part of the track.
Oh no, like I said, Deer Park is one of my favorite events in the game, especially because of that scenery change. There's no part of this track that doesn't look really nice.
Well, see you around, Mila. For the second time.
So they never really established what happened to Nikki. What I think is supposed to happen is that when you race Nikki and Mila, you start in 150 first, but you can only finish the event if you beat both of them. So when you actually get into Las Vegas, you're in 149th, which means that one of them got in under the cutoff. And I think that one canonically is supposed to be Mila.
That's fair.
Of course, the game never tells you any of this.
That's slightly less fair.
So this is Sawmill Drive, another one of my favorite events in the game, because this is very, very technical. You may look at these narrow roads and very fast corners and think, wow, this is really dangerous, and it is.
And then you see...
Oh look, Mode Wondershot, your Carabinieri have arrived.
Yep.
Wanted suspect spotted, won't be hard to take him out. Stand by.
The Carabinieri will race really hard, and they have rubber banding on, but if you're fast enough, they won't even overtake you.
Well, it's not the endless CCX brigade, but it'll do.
Suspect won't pull over. Switch to advanced tactics.
The Sawmill Drive checkpoint cutoffs and the times that they give you, I think are designed for you to be able to account for being chased by the Gallardo and harassed.
Code 6, crossed enemy, still mobile.
But as long as you drive fast enough, they can't really overtake you because the road is too narrow.
Still on him. Shut them down.
So for the most part, they just kind of mess with you and try to brake check you and hit you and all that.
I see him.
That may or may not have been the first time in the run so far where we got something other than an incredible or close call.
Well, I imagine that it's certainly compensating for the presence of the Carabinieri, but at the same time, you're definitely showing that you can outrace them in the strictest sense of the word.
Down. Affirmative.
Thank you.
Get a nail on clear as
Of course, they will always have somebody hard rubber band behind you for this last hairpin.
Right, but when you're able to stop that quickly, I think you've definitely invalidated the risk presented therein.
Yeah, I mean, it works out pretty good. The biggest thing to know about Sawmill Drive is that even though all the corners are technical and scary, most of them have a very slight bank to them, which isn't really noticeable until you've driven the route a few times. So push the car harder than usual and you'll be fine.
And with that, we say, buonasera, polizia.
So, when I actually went back to try and finish out the run, the game, like, totally crashed on me.
Of course it did.
But then when I loaded back in, it skipped past this. So this footage is actually from another separate run that I had done.
Oh, this game.
So I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the end of stage screen.
This game, it just raises so many questions. Not all of which I think we want answers to.
Unfortunately not.
But hey, it looks like we're at the last leg of the run.
Hey, that's a place I recognize.
Time to get to the Beast Coast.